That's a full beer. It's probably only a week old. It's probably still good. Ice cream in December. Alright, welcome back. It's a new day. We've got our bike assembled, but now starts the process of going front to back on this bike, every nut and bolt, and make sure everything is perfect and ready to go. And that's going to start today with mounting the front brake caliper and then correctly spacing this front wheel, as well as running the front brake line. So let's get started. So the spacers I have on here, altogether it's the right length, but you can see that the wheel is not perfectly centered the way it should be. As well as I don't have the brake caliper mounted yet, so I need to see what size that spacer is, and then figure out what I need to take up the difference. So this is a brand new Springer brake from Rewire. These I get through TC Bros. It includes the caliper, chrome. This one is a left side caliper, and then all the fittings and the spacers for a wide glide wheel. But because we're on Sportster, we don't have a wide glide, so that's what the additional spacers are for. Alright, so we've got our anchor rod for the caliper itself to keep it from rotating, and the hardware for that, wide glide spacers, and thrust washers and sleeves. And let's start by getting this wheel off. And here's our caliper mounting bracket. I think before these used to come with a little 3x5 cards worth of instructions, and they don't even come with that now, so keep that in mind. Alright, so we've got our caliper mounted on the mounting bracket, and let's figure out how we can install this thing. Like I said, there are no instructions. If they wanted us to do it right, they would have sent it right. So we've got this pivot spacer, so the outside diameter is machined so that it slides in here inside this bronze bushing. And then we've got two machine washers that go on either side of the brakes, and then we've got additional spacers that go outside of those. So what I've figured here, we'll take our pivot spacer here, our regular spacers, the thrust washer, or machine washer, whatever you want to call it, caliper, another washer, and then the last spacer, which has got a step to it. And I want to make sure that that one rides inside, so that it's only riding on the metal surface of the bearing and not on the seal itself. So let's get it installed just like that. If you install these a different way, or if you make your own spacers, or if you have a kit that you buy, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Let me know. Caliper on. This is our stepped spacer and our thrust washer inside. So that's what we got. And it's not really dragging on either side of the caliper or on the rotor. It's pretty free moving, so I'm happy with that. What we have to figure out now is what size spacers go on this side, as well as over here to take up the difference. So there we go. There's our brake side. There's our off side. There's our little bit of gap there on the left. There's our almost perfectly centered wheel. Right. Included, they gave us a short and long bolt. The long bolt goes on the caliper bracket, and the short bolt goes into the threaded bung on the fork. Make sure that you use Loctite on these, which I will be doing later. Ice cream in December. So there's our caliper mounted up. Now let's dig in our bucket of parts here. Find ourselves some brake lines. So on this bike, I don't know if I've talked about before, this is for a gentleman that's doesn't really have the use of his ankles, feet. So both brakes are mounted on the handlebars. So I was able to find a mirrored set of hydraulic handlebar controls. This one is intended for a clutch, but they're the exact same thing. So we're going to run his front brake off the left side. Alright, so I played around with the lines a little bit, trying to route them safely, and this is what I came up with. I think it's good here. So it comes up, it goes between the springer forks, back up around the handlebars, and back up to the master cylinder. The reason I did this way is because you got to watch all along here and make sure that it's not in any pinch points. And this is a big one right here, these little fork ups that are built in. You might not be thinking about it when you run your brake lines. You might run them up through, and it's just waiting to be smashed right here against the neck stem. So this looks pretty safe to me. It's not caught up in the springs or anything like that. So I think that's how we're gonna do it. All right. Had to make a quick run to Harbor Freight for some Loctite and some .3. And a lot of, well, I know at least this year, these O2s, they call for .5 in the original system because they run the exhaust closer to, or excuse me, they run the brake lines closer to the exhaust. In this case, I'm going to run .3, which has a lower boiling point, because these brake calipers call for, or these brake master cylinders call for .3 or .4. And I'm not running .4, even though it's better under temperature because it actually attracts more moisture. So its service life is a little less than .3. And .3 is cheaper, easier to find. Now we're just going to make sure all of our hardware is Loctited. I've actually had one of these, I ran it without Loctite once upon a time, and the bolt for the anchor came out, and when I pressed the brakes, it pulled this caliper so hard it just pulled the line right off, and I had no front brakes going down a mountain road. So my advice is always use Loctite, especially on your braking system. There's our brake system tightened up. Let's get some fluid in here and get it bled. I like that these bars are wide enough that it hangs out well over the tank, because what I don't want to do is spill brake fluid on my brand new paint job. But watch, I'll find a way. I just went to make a return at AutoZone. $20
power steering pump hose with the GMC. And the guy didn't know what to make of it. I bought it online, tried to return it in the store, and that was the start of my troubles. He called the helpline, and we both sat there at the counter for 10-15 minutes waiting for somebody to pick up. They finally did, and then they hung up immediately. He called his manager, who was off at the time. Simple return turned into a 30-minute ordeal. Okay, there we go. Brakes are nice and firm. So I think next I'll start working on a headlight mount. I'm going to reuse the stock headlight. Hopefully it cleans up all right. And I'll be making a simple little bracket to angle up and hold the headlight. All right, welcome back. Today I'm going to continue moving from the front of the bike backwards and making sure everything is good to go. The first thing I want to do is address the bearing in this Springer. The top neck bearing has not been greased. I threw it in there dry just for mock-up reasons, so I'm going to take off the whole top end of this Springer, grease that bearing. I think what I'll do is get the grips on as well, and the throttle assembly and the cables routed. So we'll do that now.
Where are we at with the head?
All right, so that's our bearing done. All right, so just kind of experimenting with things here. There's no washer between the bottom of these risers and the top clamp. So when it tightens down, it's kind of set in that position. There's no compression like any kind of crush washer or anything. What I've got are from a factory narrow glide. These are the little washers that go above and below the rubber grommets that your bars would normally go into, and they just happen to fit right perfect center on the bottom of these risers, and they give me just enough of a shim that I can tighten these to make sure they're perpendicular. So that worked out pretty well. And they just happen to be 1/2 inch diameter, which fits right on the stud. I'm not really worried about these coming off even if they weren't super tight, because once the bars are on and these two screws are tightened, they can't rotate, but it's better to have things tight. Do something about that air cleaner. It looks kind of ugly. Before I put this carb away, I ran it with the petcock closed on the old tank to clear out the fuel that was left in the bowl and maybe keep the jets clear. So we'll see how that works. It'll probably still need some cleaning, so this is more than likely going to have to come off again. All right, excuse my voice. I got a little sick, of course. Happens every year. We're back working on the chopper today. I'm going to work on the headlight. I'm going to get it mounted up. I managed to find this in my boxes of parts, this one little chrome mount here that angles it up just enough to keep it out of the way of the springs.
What it does need, though, because it's so narrow, is spacers on either side. This is the headlight that came off the bike. Doesn't look like it's a stock Sportster light, but this is one we're going to be using. We'll clean it up a little bit, get some of this rust off. I'm going to rewire it so that it's internally grounded, and then I'm going to wire the high beams and low beams together like I usually do. The brighter the better, I think, when you're on a bike like this. And then we'll run a long wire back to the down the backbone and back to where we're going to mount the key switch and get this ready for power. So we'll do that today. That's a full beer. It's probably only a week old. It's probably still good. Here's our headlight. We'll start by getting it disassembled. So this looks like the original light, stamped Harley-Davidson right there on the bulb, which is good. I like reusing the quality parts. It also looks like it's already internally grounded. So for some reason it's got an internal ground as well as the ground at the plug. So I'm going to remove the plug. I like to leave, just in case I need to go back to a factory style plug for any reason. It's good to leave an inch or two of wire sticking out of the plug. Let's see if we can slide this heat shrink tubing. So we'll hang on to this plug for whatever reason. If we don't keep it, I'll just put it back on the factory harness. That way whoever buys that harness can wire in their headlight, no problem. So hang on to the factory plugs if they still work. We'll plug this back in and make sure that the bulb actually works. So it looks like yellow is our low beam and the white is the high beam. And all the rubber gaskets and everything seem to be in pretty good shape too. It's only a 2002, but it was left out in a side yard in the East Bay here in California. So you never know. I'll pull these wires through. I'm going to get the outside here cleaned up with some tin foil, like I like to do, and put it all back together. Alright, we're back with our headlight housing cleaned up. Some tin foil and some soapy water. Usually does a pretty good job. There you go. So this was almost covered in rust. And now it's looking like something we can actually put on this bike. So to mount this thing, here's our headlight mount that's going on the Springer. And here's the bracket for the headlight housing. So we've got to make some spacers to go in between. And I have this little scrap. This came off of the foot pegs. So I'm just gonna drill this out to 3/8 so that a bolt will just slide in, and cut it in sections to go on either side of the headlight mount. And to hold in the vise without scratching it up too much more than it already is, I'm just going to put it in a piece of this heater hose like that, and then clamp it down. So I bored out the center of this. I'm going to measure out what I need for spacers, and then cut these to length. 1 inch. There's one side done. There we go. So there's our spacers installed. I'm happy with that. There we go. Let's get our headlight reassembled here. So I'm going to cut the high and low beams off here. About there. And I'm going to splice these two together.
Normally I'd heat shrink these if they were exposed, but it's not so much of an issue inside this headlight housing because it's got all these gaskets to keep everything nice and dry. Really long cut of wire here. I cut it oversized because I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to route it yet. Run our wire back through our grommet here. Out the back of the headlight. And there we go. So our 3-wire headlight with the plug has now been converted to a single wire headlight, internally grounded, with a nice long lead that we can route to the key switch however we need to. Jesus Christ, there we go. Cool. Headlights mounted. And looking much better. Alright, we got some stuff we can start checking off here. Mount headlight, done. Throttle and grips, done. Lead neck bearing, done. Ugh. Got it.